to the Self-Publishing Advice Beginner Salon podcast. This is your host, Jyotsna Ramachandran, and with me we have our co-host, Tim Lewis. Hi, Tim.
Hi.
Hi, today I'm super excited because we are going to be talking about how much money can authors actually make from writing, right?
Yes, that's the show topic today.
Yes, but before we dive into that, I would love to know more about what's happening with you. I know you're just back from the US from the podcast movement conference, right? So how is it?
It was very good. It's the third podcast movement I've been to. Actually, I'm wearing a podcast movement 2016 shirt, but I'm not going to lie back enough for you to actually see that. So, but this year it was in Philadelphia, and because I hate night flights, I flew back from Boston because Boston's one of the few US cities that has a morning flight to the UK. Mm-hmm. So I spent a few days in Boston, then to Philadelphia, then overnight in Boston, and then back. And the conference was really good because it has everything you've ever wanted to know about podcasting, basically. And there's a great group of people there. So people who podcast about all sorts of obscure topics. So it's a great community of podcasters.
Yeah, it's really nice to go to live events because most of us who work online, that's where you actually meet real people. So were there any key takeaways for authors?
Well, as I was talking about in the pre-chat, I went to one particularly good session about how to chart in the Apple podcast chart. So, and it struck me the similarities with the same kind of advice for self-publishers and the Amazon chart. So the podcast charts are driven purely by subscription. So somebody going on to the Apple app and subscribing to your podcast. And this guy who does loads of client work with people who he launches podcasts for. His thing is all about getting people to subscribe in 1 or 2 days to a particular podcast in a short period of time, in a similar way to how you want to get sales for your books within a confined period of time. Now, Amazon is a bit more finicky about its algorithm than iTunes or Apple Podcasts, as they're now known are. Right. So for Amazon, you need to have a sustained period over a few days, but the concept is the same. And there were also other things that he said, like with your artwork on the podcast artwork, make sure it's different from all the other artwork in that category so it stands out. And I think something like that could apply for books as well.
Absolutely.
So make sure your cover, if every other cover in your book is in your book category is black, make sure yours is white, for example, and that kind of thing. Obviously, you don't want terrible artwork, but you want something that's just distinctive so that people are going to click on it when they see have a look at it. So that kind of stuff was quite interesting to me because I've never seen anybody do that kind of talk for podcasts before.
Yeah, I think consumer behavior is pretty much the same, whether it's on an Amazon store or Apple's podcast. So I think those are really important points that even authors can use.
Yeah. And there is an element of just begging absolutely everybody you know to buy your book or subscribe to your podcast, something which I've never been particularly good at, to be fair. So that was interesting anyway, as a particular standout session for me.
Right. I have also been attending conferences back home in India. And the good thing is I've partnered with a seminar company in India. And we have created 3-day book writing boot camps. Because here, a lot of people are not aware of the option of self-publishing, and people are not too tech savvy yet to just go online and find out for themselves. So we've created a 3-day program that goes totally in depth about self-publishing, and at the end of the program, we offer them our services. So it's a great platform for me to move away from just the online stuff I've been doing and really connect with people on a one-on-one basis. So it's been a lot of fun. So we've scheduled a lot of seminars in the coming months. So exciting times ahead. Okay,
well, that sounds fantastic. I mean, there is something great about this good old-fashioned real world where actually making those connections. And certainly if you're a credible person, it's actually often a lot of times better to communicate in the real world, so to speak. An awful lot of books I've sold have been because people have met me in real life. So it's very easy to think that you're going to set up this sort of system online and do everything online, but actually don't neglect the real world and the real world connections that you make, because
True.
Unless you're really sleazy, real world is probably going to be a better place to sell things.
That's true. So wherever we go, we talk about the benefits of becoming an author. So today, let's talk about, is it really worth it in terms of the monetary benefits of becoming an author?
Yeah, well, I mean, I suggested this topic because it's been one of the popular shows. A couple of the popular shows on my podcast have been about author income and about how much money you can make, and how, and it's interesting because it's very easy to say you should self-publish and make millions, and there are lots of people pushing self-publishing because of the financial kind of benefits of it. On the other hand, I wouldn't want to be the person who tells somebody you should give up your joy job and write your book about dinosaur romance, and you're going to live happily ever after. Because you've got to be said, there are an awful lot of self-published authors who aren't making that much more money either. They're generally making more money than traditionally published authors for similar books, but a lot of self-publishers aren't making money. So I thought it'd be an interesting topic, especially to talk to you about, because you have lots of clients who have made a lot of money out of self-publishing. So
Absolutely.
You can give the happy perspective, so to speak, of self-publishing. Well, I can be the Grinch and say, like, don't give up your day job.
Right. No, I totally agree that giving up your day job just because you've written your first book would be insane. Because until you consistently make a good, 5-figure income per month through your books, it really doesn't make sense for most people. Especially if you're living in countries like the US or the UK where the cost of living is pretty high, right? In India, when I used to make even $3,000 or $4,000 a month from my book royalties, it was good enough for me to shut down my other businesses and just focus on my books. But I'm sure that's not the case in other countries. So one has to first understand how much money do they need at least to take care of their bills, and make sure it comes consistently, and they have a plan for the book, like a marketing plan to consistently sell the book. I find that a lot of people don't give the kind of importance that the book deserves. So they write the book with a lot of passion, they put it out on Amazon, and then they forget about it. So when you don't really focus on it, the book is not going to sell by itself and you're not going to become rich. But I know a lot of authors who really give the kind of importance that the book deserves. They monitor the sales on a daily basis, and they keep coming up with strategies to keep increasing the sales. So those are the kind of people who really take it up seriously. They are the ones who end up quitting their jobs after a few months or a couple of years, and they become full-time writers. So I know an author called Steve Scott. He used to write books related to internet marketing. Then he started focusing on the habit building genre. So he writes a lot of, I think he's written more than 60 or 70 books now in the last 4 years. That's a lot of books. He writes these short, concise ebooks, and he has been doing this on a very regular basis. Every 2 months a book is out, and he does it in all the different formats: an audiobook, a paperback, and the ebook. And now he's in a position where he can really make lots and lots of money through the book. But not everybody gives that kind of time and puts in that kind of effort. So it could be a challenge for most writers. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the people who are consistently who have given up their day job and are doing it purely as professional way, they are producing an awful lot of books. So like people like Mike and AskALLi and the people who do the 20 books to 50K conference, they are almost doing industrial level self-publishing. So they've got like in-staff editors. They're producing like a book every month in a long series of books. So it's kind of like they're not just writing a book and then expecting like all the money to pour in. They are producing series, and they have got a system running. And I think that if you do that kind of approach and you're professional about it, you will eventually get to the point where you are more than self-sufficient and you're actually getting a decent amount of income coming in. People like Joanna Penn, who is now very big and very successful. I mean, she would tell you that she and her husband downsized their property. I think they had a property and they sold it and they downsized to a smaller flat, so that she had this like financial flexibility to be able to spend the time on her like writing career. And that's one other option, especially if you're in like the US or the UK. Property prices are really high and costs are really high. But on the other hand, if you've got an existing property or existing income coming in and you really cut back your costs, then that gives you the opportunity to get into that habit, get into the groove and start producing books to get through that period where you may be not making money. And you're right, you do need to focus on the marketing. This is where I've been particularly terrible in that I've tended to publish books and then get distracted by another project, either a podcast or the new book. And I've not put in the time to do the marketing because from my experience, I've had my very first book was reasonably successful, but some of the later books have not been. You almost need, whether or not the book is the best book ever or the worst book ever, you need to get it to a certain point before people actually see it in the marketplace. Right. So marketing is really important just to get your book out there, because it can be the best book in the world. And like everybody reads it can be like, and you can say, oh, word of mouth will find the book. And it's like, well, it might do after 20 years. I mean, there are a long history of books that were successful 20 or 30 years, but the person who wrote the book died as a pauper, even though the book now is really well known. Right. So don't necessarily rely on word of mouth. You've actually got to get out there and promote your book to have a hope that it will be successful.
True. I think it all begins with the mindset that if an author believes, like Joanna, that I'm going to become a full-time author, that's going to be my main job, and they take the necessary steps, I think that's the starting place. Because I really doubt how many people would take that drastic step of downsizing your house because you want to focus on your career as a writer. So I think that conviction is really important. And then the other key point that you mentioned is the series of books. Magic doesn't happen with just one book. I mean, it's like a lottery that can happen for maybe 1 in a million, but for the rest of us, I think the consistency in publishing more and more books that are in the same genre so that you become the leader in that category and you develop a following. Because I think by the time you write your 5th or 6th book, you actually have a sizable audience who are really waiting for your next book. I think once you reach that level of followers, that's when success starts like knocking your door.
Yeah, well, it is an exponential thing as well, because let's say that you write a whole series of books about, I don't know, yoga or something, and you write 10 books about yoga and none of them sell. Then you do a new series where you start writing about shiatsu massage. And about book 3 in that series, you've been doing it for about 2 years or whatever, and you made hardly any money. About book 3 in that series, it really takes off. Now, people who bought that series of shiatsu massage books, a lot of them will go back and buy the yoga books because it's by you. So those books are still assets, even if they're not selling now. There's nothing to stop. If you write a successful book in the future, your old books will sell as well. So don't get too dispirited if your books don't sell now, because if they're good and they're good quality, they may sell in the future. But you have to keep producing stuff so that there is that hope that people will come back to your old stuff. So it's never a case that a book is a waste of time, because it may pick up. I mean, you may become famous for some totally unrelated reason, and then people will buy your book.
Absolutely,
so, it's kind of like, look, when I was in Boston, I went to the JFK Presidential Museum. And JFK wrote 2 books, and I'm sure they sell because JFK wrote them, whether or not they're actually good books or not at all. But that's the thing. I mean, a book is an investment, but I wouldn't expect necessarily to be able to write a book and then give up your job and be like, oh, happy and cheerful and roses, because that's just foolhardy, really, at the end of the day, unless you have a plan and a big amount of cash or something that you've downsized, or you're working at Starbucks while in a small flat that you rented and you used to have a mansion. You have to be sensible about the way that you arrange the money in terms of actually making money self-publishing.
Absolutely. Because you mentioned yoga, Tim, I could immediately think of a client of ours. So she is a yoga teacher and she would conduct classes on online on Skype. So when she wrote her first book, it was just a book, and it did decently well during the launch. But a couple of months later, she gave us a call and she told that within the first month of the launch, she managed to book $30,000 worth of coaching clients through her book. They all found her through the book. And that was amazing, because the money doesn't just have to be in the form of royalties. You could, if you have some kind of a business that is related to the book, if your book is on Instagram ads and you have a social media agency, so people would read your book, and maybe, busy entrepreneurs don't have the time to implement it themselves, and they would end up giving it to your agency. So a lot of people have their own coaching, consulting practices, or even online courses. And I find them really making a lot of money in the back end. So even if they have just sold, say, 500 books and they get just 5 clients out of that, it really covers the cost of publishing and more. So
yeah, well, I mean, there is, on the non-fiction side, certainly, there is credibility. I mean, you hear the expression, they wrote the book on it. Well, now you can write the book on it just because you can self-publish a book on it. Because 9 out of 10 people who know about a topic either haven't got the time, or are too frightened, or are waiting for a publisher, or some other reason they haven't written the book on a topic. So if you self-publish a book on a topic, and especially if it's the only book or one of the few books on that topic, you become an expert almost, because a lot of people won't read the book, but they'll know that it exists, that you've got a book on that topic. Right. So you're right. I think for non-fiction people, if you do any kind of business based on your activity, I mean, if it's like, even if it's, say, like fly fishing in Scotland, there used to be an advert in the UK that was famous for this guy called J.R. Hartley, who was always rigging up people trying to find this book that he'd written in the 70s about fly fishing. Even something like that, you could maybe do a deal with people who are arranging fly fishing holidays and become an affiliate and make money from your book via like an affiliate relationship, rather than even if you don't have a business. So you're right, for non-fiction, I think the money is not necessarily in the book, but in the prestige and the spin-offs that you get from the actual book.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you rightly mentioned, a person doesn't have to have their own products or services. They could be affiliate for a ton of different products, and that can bring them huge income. But again, it all boils down to how consistently you do it. And one book may or may not really bring wonders. So it's all about the consistency.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I should say what an affiliate thing is, because I mean, it's a term that I know and you know.
Yeah.
But for people who don't know, what an affiliate is so, for example, you can be an Amazon affiliate. So you can go on to, if you type Amazon affiliate into Amazon, you've got a little web link, and anybody who uses that web address to a particular product, you will get paid like 2% or 3% cost, because you're almost like an introductory fee. So you're being paid a commission for introducing somebody to something. So that's what an affiliate relationship is.
Yeah. And what's awesome about Amazon affiliate is if the person clicks your link and goes and buys not necessarily the product that you suggested, but anything else for the next 48 hours, imagine they've bought an LCD TV. Even you get a chance to earn a commission even on that. So that way, I think Amazon is pretty cool when it comes to their affiliate program.
I mean, once I almost jokingly put a web page up with loads of these motorized lawnmowers, which was like $4,000. No, somebody might buy one. Nobody did, but I was hoping I might get £80 affiliate for somebody buying a motorized lawnmower for my email list. But nobody is. So that's the thing you don't know. I mean, Amazon actually, compared to a lot of companies, their affiliate rates are quite low. I mean, a lot of online courses. So if you're talking about social media, a lot of people running social media courses, because it's mainly profit for them, the course, they are paid, some of them pay like 20, 30, 50% affiliate rates. So affiliate deals can be very good for authors if it's somebody in your related area, though it has to be something that you actually are happy to be associated with. You don't want to sell a get rich quick course, then have all the people who you've read your book giving you bad reviews because you gave them, they got ripped off.
Yeah, people are buying because they trust the author, so authors should never make a wrong use of that trust that they have won, right? And with in terms of fiction authors, I have been following Nick Stevenson for a long time. And what Nick does is he has given away one book which is permanently free on Amazon. So, and I'm sure a lot of fiction readers love free stuff, and they end up downloading his book, and they are a part of his email list now. So whenever he publishes a new book, they all get notified. And I think building your email list is super critical even for fiction authors, because that's how the readers of the previous book will get to know about your new launch. And yeah, I think it's having 1 or 2 books permanently free on Amazon is a great strategy to build that list and then eventually grow your readership.
Oh yeah, though I think it worked a lot better in the past than it does now, but it's still a valid technique. I mean, the advantage, if you've got, as a fiction author, if you've got an email list of 1,000 people who are actually genuinely 1,000 people, they're not just somebody who did some sort of giveaway deal and they don't really know who you are. The advantages it gives you are that you can make sure that people buy your book when it comes out. So you spike up the charts in a similar way to like what I was talking about before. And also it means that you're going to get a lot of reviews for your books from these people who are more like your super fans. And reviews are so fantastically important for books. Especially good reviews, but just having any reviews, really, having the last number of reviews for your book, because you don't want, I mean, if you're going onto Amazon and you see a book but there are no reviews for it at all, that's a little bit, unless it's very, very new, that's a little bit suspicious to most people. Even like having a 3-star or 4-star rating and having like 80 reviews, I think it's better than having 2 5-star reviews and one of them looks like your mum. So... That's the kind of advantage to having a list already, but you need to be able to get that list of people. So you're saying it's just having that group of people who will go and buy your stuff. That makes so much difference.
True, absolutely. Tim, would you like to give a ballpark number, which is realistic, that authors can probably look at as what they can possibly make from publishing a book? I'm sure the range is huge. There are people who make nothing and there are people who make lots and lots of money. So any numbers you want to share that you know of how much people are making?
Well, I've done, I did actually a blog post stroke podcast episode about author income, but I didn't kind of answer it in the same way because it's very difficult because I haven't got Amazon. I mean, somebody maybe like Data Guy could give you a better thing of an average amount for how much people. My suspicion is that it's like with podcasts. Apparently, like the average podcast gets about 140 downloads a month, which is actually pretty low. That's the middle level. And I suspect the middle level in terms of like self-published authors is going to be like probably less than $100 a month. But that's not necessarily as depressing as it sounds, because there is an awful lot of people who are either self-publishing a book because they just wanted to self-publish a book. They did a very short book. They didn't edit it properly. It's got loads of typos in it. They haven't marketed. They've done a good book, but they've not marketed it, and they've given up.
And that's why the average is so low.
Yeah, that will be dragging the average. I mean, I don't know. I've just picked that figure out the top of my head as a guess. It may be much higher or it may be much lower. So everything's going to be pushed down by loads of books that are selling basically nothing a month, like maybe 1 or 2 copies.
Right.
But if I click across to my, I've got a little chart I did on my. What I did was I worked out. I've got a little chart that I'm looking at, so you'll have to bear with me here. But rather than asking like how much money would you make, I did some calculations roughly of how many books you have to sell to get the cost back of your book.
That's interesting. It's like an ROI calculation, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is at beginselfpublishing.com/author income. So, and it makes a big difference how much your ebook costs. This is just looking at ebooks, and this is just looking at the US, because I couldn't be bothered to do the more complicated calculations than that.
Right.
So for a 99 cents ebook, and this is just in the US, and let's say it's 40,000 words long, and I used the standard costs that Readsy have So Readsy is a company that does like marketing services.
Right.
And they said this is the average amount that people spend on covers. This is the average amount people spend on editing, and they're more high end. So these are higher costs. But to break even in terms of sales for a 99-cent ebook, just in the US, you need to sell 9,726 copies of the book.
Right.
If it's 40,000 words long, if it's 80,000 words long,
so,
which is typical. Yeah.
What is the assumption they're making in terms of the investment?
Well, the assumption that I'm making is I'm using Readsy's figures because it costs more to edit a longer book. That's why I'm giving different figures for how long the book is. For an 80,000 word book, which is like a typical novel as opposed to non-fiction book, you need to sell 14,226 copies for a 99-cent ebook.
Right.
Now, the reason why these figures are so high is that for 99-cent ebook, you only get 35% royalties, which is something you need to always consider. Now, if we take the two same figures for a $9.99 ebook, for a 40,000 word ebook, you need to sell 504 copies of your book.
Which sounds more practical.
That's considerably lower.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And for an 80,000 word book, you need to sell 737. Now, the great problem is that $9.99 is really, really way too high for most ebooks, unless it's very technical, maybe like a programming book or a really premium skill book. You could get away with $9.99. Yeah. Certainly for a 40,000 word ebook, you'd be struggle to sell it for $9.99.
Yeah, so I think most other books are priced between $2.99 and $4.99 for ebooks.
So I have got the figure. So for the $2.99, say, which is the standard sort of ebook price, for a 40,000 word ebook, you need 1,880 book sales to break even.
All right.
Which actually, if you look at it, is over the lifetime of a book, isn't that hard to ask, really.
Yeah.
And for an 80,000 word book, you need 2,750 book sales.
Right.
So,
right. And I'm sure if the author also produces the book as a paperback as well as an audiobook, these numbers would drastically reduce, right?
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing. Now this is a break-even calculation, so this is just for you to get the money back that you spent on your course. Yeah. I have actually later on I put in some more thought experiment things that like actually accounting for your writing time as well. So if you were like if you earn the minimum wage, or if you counted that your writing time was the minimum wage cost. But if anybody wants the fun of looking at my thought experiment calculation. But you're right. In reality, you could have a paperback book as well. You can have an audio book. And this is taking no notice of all the ancillary advantages as you're talking about, like selling yoga courses or affiliates.
It's just the royalty.
Yeah, it's just the royalty amount. But it is something that, so you got, like, let's say for an average ebook, you probably need to be thinking you need to sell about 2,000 copies to make your money back. Probably less, depending on, I mean, if you can get a good deal on a cover designer, you can find an editor maybe you can barter with, or you can find somebody cheaper who's actually very good. Then that that number of books you need to sell goes right down.
Absolutely.
But it's probably a good idea to be thinking about 2,000 or 3,000 books is what you will need to be selling to kind of be making good money from a book. And that's in the lifetime of a book.
Right.
So this is where having new books available that can make sure that people actually go back and buy your old books, it becomes much more of an important thing in terms of making money from self-publishing.
Absolutely. I would also like to share one tool for authors who are still in the planning stage and they've not really decided on what topic to write. There is this cool tool in this website called Kindlepreneur, where if you enter the Amazon rank of a book, it will show how many copies is it selling per day. So probably if an author is confused about should I go with a horror genre or mystery, then probably they can go into Amazon and look at the Amazon rank of the other books that are selling in that category. And that way, they would really get a good idea about how many copies is the other author selling. But again, it's by no means it means that you can sell the same number of copies, but it'll at least give people some vague idea about how much the other authors are making. So that's something which people can look at if they want to compare some categories and see how the books are doing. I can probably leave the link in the show notes so people can check out, just enter the Amazon rank and it will show the number of copies that particular book is selling on an average per day and per month.
Yeah, I mean, another great resource for people is the K-Lytics website, where they do reports on which categories are relatively selling more than other ones.
Yeah.
But that Kindlepreneur site is actually very good for general blog posts, as well as, I didn't even know that tool existed, so I'll have to check it out as well.
Yeah, it's a free tool and it's pretty cool for people who are doing their research.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I'm always of the I don't want to encourage people to just give up their day job and think they're going to become, especially on the fiction side, because on non-fiction, there are so many more ways to make money off the back of the book. I think actually, for my last interview with the guy who runs K-Lytics, Alex Newton, he was saying that there is a lot more money actually in books in fiction, but you haven't got you can't sell a course about your fantasy book, really. I mean, I suppose you could. Maybe
you can write a course, create a course on how to write fantasy books and sell it to other authors. Yeah.
That's why you see an awful lot of fiction authors who are successful do write marketing courses, because they suddenly realise they can teach other people how to do what they did and make money from it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like Mark Dawson, who has created his Facebook Marketing for Authors course, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, that is, but I mean, fiction, the other advantage that fiction has over non-fiction is that fiction doesn't date. So if you write, well, I mean, I suppose something like yoga, but there might be some new technique that comes out in yoga that this book was written beforehand and you have to update your book. But certainly if you're writing a book about social media, your book's probably going to, I mean, I'm writing a book about social media and I'm probably going to have to update it in a year or so. So there is this, you're going to have the costs of updating, and or your book could just sort of die and get older and older. So I'm sure a Facebook marketing book from 2008 is not going to be that relevant now, as opposed to one written this year. But this year's book might be irrelevant next year. Sure. So that's an advantage that fiction has over non-fiction, in that you write it and it's there and you don't necessarily really have to do anything about it. Once you've written it, it's out there. People buy it or they don't buy it, but they might buy it in future. Where with non-fiction, you could write loads of books about internet marketing, and if they don't sell now, by the time they might sell in the future, they'll be out of date.
Totally. So, yeah, I think each genre has its own advantages. In India, I know of a fiction author. He is super popular here. He writes stories for young adults, and he has now become a screenplay writer for movies because he's so good at his plots. The movie guys have identified his talent and they are making him write screenplays. And I know a lot of authors whose whose story rights have been bought by filmmakers, but I think that's very, very rare, and so one can't just depend on something like that and quit their career. But I think for fiction authors, if the book is selling on its own organically through your marketing efforts and you keep publishing more and more books and build a huge following, I think that's when you'll be ready to actually quit your job. So don't be in a hurry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all the people like Mark Dawson, Adam Croft, who've been really, really successful fiction authors, they have put the time in. They've created book after book after book after book after book, and all high quality stuff as well. So, yeah, I mean, consistency, it doesn't guarantee anything. I mean, you can write 100 books and all of them not sell. But I think that's pretty unlikely. I think if you've written 100 books and none of them sell, then you've probably got a more fundamental problem.
Exactly.
But it's very easy to just write one book, and it might be the best book in the world, but it may just never take off. So you've got to keep that consistency going. Obviously, this is not something I've done very well. I write about a book a year. But I think if you're really serious about fiction writing, you should concentrate on it and write as many books as you can and get that cycle going, because you will improve as a writer just by writing more books.
Exactly. And the feedback you get from your readers is so important to improve your next book. And I think that's why writing more number of books really helps in improving your writing and making it interesting enough for your readers.
Yeah.
Great. So thank you so much, Tim, for sharing all those valuable inputs. And we'll see you guys again next month. And until then, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you get notified every time we post a new video.
Right down here.
Yeah.
Or up here, or wherever you're watching it.
Wherever, yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Bye. See you.